There comes a moment in your life when the applause stops, when the people you thought would cheer for you fall silent, when your circle shrinks so small it starts to feel like you're standing in the middle of a battlefield alone. And it's in that moment, right there, when nobody sees your struggle, nobody answers your call, nobody affirms your vision, that God begins to do his deepest work. You see, sometimes he removes the crowd so he can reveal your crown. Sometimes he allows isolation not as punishment, but as preparation. Because getting ahead isn't always about who's with you, it's about who's within you. This word today is for the one who's been feeling unseen, uncelebrated, and unsupported. For the one who's still showing up, still fighting, still believing, even when nobody's there to clap. You've been thinking you're behind, but baby, you're right on schedule. Because when God is your source, silence becomes sacred, and the absence of people becomes the presence of purpose. We often associate progress with people believing that if we just had the right support, the right connections, or the right applause, we could finally move forward. But what if God intentionally removed the noise so you could finally hear him? Sometimes isolation is not the enemy, it's the classroom. It's the place where God strips away distractions, false securities, and shallow affirmations so you can learn to depend on his voice above all others. See, the truth is some of us have been addicted to affirmation without realizing it. We've been measuring our worth by who texts back, who shows up, who reposts, who claps. And when that stops, we start questioning if we're still anointed. But let me tell you something. Silence doesn't mean absence, and solitude doesn't mean abandonment. God sometimes has to isolate you so he can identify you. When you're surrounded by people, it's easy to blend in, to perform, to please, to wear the mask that makes everyone comfortable. But when God calls you higher, he starts removing the layers that kept you safe, but also kept you small. Isolation exposes what you've been depending on, what you've been hiding behind. It forces you to confront your fears, your insecurities, and your faith. Because it's only when everything familiar fades away that you can finally see what's been within you all along. Think about David. Before he was anointed king, he was just a shepherd boy, forgotten, overlooked, left out in the field while everyone else got invited to the ceremony. Nobody thought he mattered. Nobody expected him to be chosen. But while they were looking at titles and appearances, God was watching faithfulness. David's isolation wasn't punishment. It was preparation. It was in that lonely field that he learned how to fight lions and bears. The same skills that would later help him defeat Goliath. God will often train you in private for a battle that will one day make you public. The field is not a delay, it's divine development. When you're in isolation, God is not trying to hurt you, he's trying to build you. He's pruning your heart, strengthening your spirit, and developing your character. You may not have anyone checking on you, but you've got heaven cheering for you. You may not have an audience, but you've got an assignment. And sometimes God needs to pull you away from people who only see your potential so he can show you your purpose. People see your gift, but God sees your grind. People see your light, but God knows the oil it costs to keep it burning. There's a sacredness in seasons of isolation that most people never understand. It's the season where you discover who you are without applause. You learn to pray without needing an amen. You learn to believe in your calling when no one validates it. And it's in that quiet place that your spiritual roots start to grow deeper. Because when the storm comes, and it will, you won't be shaken by opinions, emotions, or temporary support. You'll be anchored in the one who called you. Sometimes God will separate you before he elevates you. He'll take you through a season where everything feels like it's falling apart, when really he's pulling everything into place. The people who left weren't meant to carry the weight of your next level. The doors that closed were never designed to contain the fullness of your destiny. You think you lost connection, but in reality, you just gained clarity. God will allow certain relationships to end, not because they were bad, but because they were too small for where He's taking you. You've got to understand that isolation is not rejection, it's redirection. It's God saying, I'm doing something in you that doesn't require witnesses right now. It's God saying, you don't need the crowd to crown you. When you finally realize that your value doesn't decrease when people disappear, you become unstoppable because you stop chasing validation and start walking in vision. Let's be honest, it hurts when people don't show up for you. It hurts when you give your all and no one notices. It hurts when you pour out and nobody pours back. But even in that pain, God is planting something powerful. He's teaching you how to depend on Him, how to find peace in His presence, and how to keep moving even when the room is empty. Every lonely night, every unanswered prayer, every moment of silence, it's all working together to produce endurance, faith, and wisdom. You can't skip this season of isolation and expect to stand in elevation. Because if you can't handle being unseen, you won't survive being celebrated. God hides you not to delay you, but to develop you. He hides you until your roots are strong enough to sustain your growth. So when the spotlight comes, it won't destroy you. You'll know that your strength didn't come from who supported you. It came from who sustained you. You're not forgotten. You're being fortified. You're not abandoned. You're being anointed. The same God who called you in private will reveal you in public at the right time. But He won't do it until you've learned how to worship without witnesses, how to serve without applause, and how to move without permission. That's when you know you've graduated from isolation into elevation, because real elevation doesn't happen on stages. It happens in solitude. It happens in the moments when you choose obedience over opinion, purpose over popularity, and faith over feelings. So don't despise your isolation. Don't curse the silence. Don't rush the process. What feels like a setback is actually God setting you up for something greater. You're not behind, you're in training. You're not forgotten, you're being formed. Every tear, every disappointment, every lonely night, it's all shaping you for the elevation that's coming. You may not see it yet, but heaven is watching, the oil is flowing, and your next level is already written. Your isolation is God's invitation to elevation. One of the hardest lessons you'll ever learn on your journey to purpose is this: not everyone will understand what God told you. Not everyone will see what you see, believe what you believe, or support what you're building, and that's okay, because when God gives you a divine vision, He doesn't send it as a group text. He sends it directly to you. The vision is personal, it's sacred, it's tailor-made for your calling, your experiences, and your destiny. And if you spend your life waiting for others to validate what heaven already approved, you'll delay your assignment trying to convince people who were never meant to comprehend it. You don't need validation when you carry divine vision, because divine vision doesn't require consensus, it requires conviction. Conviction to believe even when it doesn't make sense. Conviction to move even when it looks impossible. Conviction to keep showing up when people whisper that you've lost your mind. See, divine vision is uncomfortable because it always calls you to build something that's bigger than where you are. It's a seed from heaven planted inside a human heart. And when that seed starts to grow, it shakes everything that's familiar. It disrupts comfort zones. It challenges your surroundings. It exposes who's really for you and who's only for your convenience. When God gives you a vision, He's trusting you with something eternal. It might look small right now, but that's only because you're in the foundation phase. People won't always understand the blueprint because they can't see the building yet. They only see the dust, the dirt, and the digging, but you see the future, the finished product, the glory that's coming. And if you allow their limited sight to become your limitation, you'll bury a dream that was meant to change lives. Moses didn't wait for validation to lead. Noah didn't wait for approval to build. Joseph didn't need consensus to dream. Each of them carried something divine, something that didn't make sense to the people around them. Imagine Noah trying to explain rain to a generation that had never seen it. Imagine Joseph telling his brothers that one day they'd bow before him. Imagine Moses, a stuttering shepherd, saying he'd stand before Pharaoh and command freedom. None of it made logical sense. But divine vision doesn't live in logic. It lives in faith. You've got to stop looking for confirmation in people who weren't in the conversation. They weren't there when God spoke to you. They didn't feel the fire in your spirit when that word hit your heart. They didn't see the vision that God played out in your dream. So why are you asking them to approve something that wasn't addressed to them? Their lack of understanding is not your cue to quit. It's your cue to keep building. When you depend on human validation, you become a hostage to human opinion. You'll start adjusting your vision to make it more palatable, more comfortable, more acceptable. And in doing so, you dilute its divine power. Vision that comes from God doesn't need to be edited to fit in. It just needs to be executed with obedience and faith. You don't owe anyone an explanation for the calling God placed on your life. You owe him your obedience. Validation feels good, but it's temporary. Vision, on the other hand, is eternal. People can clap for you one day and criticize you the next. But when you carry something divine, your fuel can't come from applause. It has to come from assignment. You've got to reach a place in your faith where even if nobody supports you, nobody reposts you, nobody believes in you, you still move because God said, go. You move not because they approve, but because he anointed. There's a peace that comes when you stop chasing validation and start trusting vision. Because when you truly understand that your steps are ordered by God, you stop taking detours just to be seen. You stop explaining yourself to people who only speak the language of fear. You stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Divine vision will always require you to look crazy before you look credible. It will make you walk away from things that make sense to pursue something that doesn't. But that's how faith works. Faith is the bridge between what you heard and what you haven't yet seen. Sometimes the silence you're experiencing isn't rejection, it's protection. God is protecting your vision from premature exposure. He knows that if you share too early, the wrong voices can contaminate your confidence. That's why Jesus told the healed man, don't tell anyone yet, because not everyone can handle what God is doing in you. Not everyone deserves front row access to your becoming. Some things are meant to be hidden until heaven says, reveal. When God gives you a vision, he also gives you the grace to carry it. That grace won't always make sense to people watching from the outside. They'll wonder how you keep going when everything looks impossible. They'll question why you still believe when everything seems delayed, but what they don't realize is that divine vision carries divine fuel. It sustains you in seasons of drought. It keeps you moving when motivation fades. It's not ambition, it's assignment. You don't do it for recognition. You do it because you were chosen. And the truth is, validation can become a distraction when you start needing it to move forward, because if people can validate you, they can also discredit you. But when your confidence is rooted in what God said, no rejection can derail you, no opinion can stop you, and no silence can shake you. You become unbothered by who believes in you because you already know heaven does. So stop waiting for people to clap before you create. Stop waiting for approval before you act. Stop waiting for permission to walk in what God already gave you authority over. The dream doesn't need confirmation, it needs consistency. The calling doesn't need validation, it needs action. Every time you show up, even when it feels small, you're honoring the vision. Every time you push through fear, you're declaring, I trust God more than I trust approval. There's power in quiet confidence. There's strength in silent obedience. There's beauty in walking in faith without announcing every step. When you know who sent you, you don't have to prove where you're going. You just move with purpose, knowing that if God started it, he'll sustain it. So yes, you might be misunderstood. You might be overlooked. You might be underestimated, but don't let that discourage you, because divine vision doesn't need everyone to see it, just you to steward it. And when the time is right, the same people who questioned your vision will witness your elevation. They'll see that what you carried wasn't just a dream, it was destiny. You don't need validation when you carry divine vision, because the one who gave it to you is the same one who will bring it to pass. And that's all the validation you'll ever need. There's something sacred about the seasons when no one sees you, the seasons when you're showing up every day, praying, working, believing, but there's no spotlight, no platform, no applause. Those are the seasons most people try to rush through, but they are the very seasons God uses to form the foundation for your future. Hidden seasons are not wasted seasons. They are the sacred classrooms of heaven where God shapes your character before he showcases your calling. You may feel forgotten, but you're being forged. See, the danger of our culture is that it glorifies visibility and undervalues preparation. Everyone wants to be seen, but not everyone wants to be shaped. We want the crown without the crushing, the recognition without the refinement, the promise without the process. But the truth is, anything that comes before its time can destroy itself. God hides you because he's building you. He shields you from exposure until your roots are deep enough to handle the weight of your fruit. When you're hidden, it's easy to assume that nothing is happening, but just like a seed buried in the soil, the most important growth happens underground. No one applauds the seed for breaking open in the dark. No one celebrates the quiet transformation beneath the surface. But if that seed doesn't break, it can never become what it was destined to be. The hidden season is where God breaks you open, where he deals with your pride, your impatience, your fears, your wounds. It's where he teaches you to depend on his voice more than people's approval. Hidden seasons are where God purifies your motives. He asks, will you still serve when no one's watching? Will you still believe when no one's clapping? Will you still show up when no one's noticing? Because if you can be faithful in private, he can trust you with influence in public. God doesn't just want to elevate your platform. He wants to fortify your heart, because your gifts can take you where your character can't keep you. And God loves you too much to let success destroy you. Think about Joseph. Before he became second in command of Egypt, he was thrown into a pit, sold as a slave, and imprisoned for years. But in those hidden years, God was training him for leadership. He learned humility in Potiphar's house. He learned stewardship in the prison. He learned how to interpret dreams before interpreting destiny. Joseph's hidden years were not punishment, they were preparation. Without the pit, he would have never been ready for the palace. And maybe that's where you are right now. Maybe you feel like your potential is buried, your progress is invisible, and your prayers are echoing in silence. But let me remind you, just because you're not seen doesn't mean you're not sent. Just because you're hidden doesn't mean you're not chosen. God hides his most precious things. He hid Moses in the river. He hid David in the field. He hid Jesus in Nazareth. Every great move of God started in a hidden place. You see, visibility doesn't validate value. You don't become valuable when people notice you. You've been valuable all along. The hidden season is where God teaches you to stop performing for approval and start walking in identity. It's where you learn that you're anointed even when you're anonymous. When you understand that, you stop craving platforms and start cherishing presence. You stop chasing moments and start building momentum. In hidden seasons, God will often silence the noise around you so he can strengthen the voice within you. He'll remove distractions, prune relationships, and close doors, not to punish you, but to prepare you for what's next. Sometimes the worst thing God could do is give you exposure before you're ready. Because exposure without maturity leads to destruction. You can't carry the weight of influence if your character hasn't been built to sustain it. So when you feel hidden, take it as a compliment. It means God is investing deeply in your development. There's a difference between being buried and being planted. The enemy wants you to believe you're buried, forgotten, covered, left to die. But God says you're planted. Same dirt, different destiny. When you're buried, your story ends. When you're planted, your story begins. What feels like isolation is actually incubation. God is growing something inside of you that the world will one day see, but not before it's ready. It's in hidden seasons that faith becomes real. When you can't see the outcome, when you don't have the audience, when the applause fades, you discover what's authentic. You find out whether you believe because it's trendy or because it's truth. You learn to worship without witnesses, to trust without evidence, to believe without signs. That's when your faith matures. That's when your roots deepen. That's when you become unshakable. Sometimes we pray for platforms, but God gives us process because the process proves whether your passion is pure. Are you doing it for Him or for them? Are you obeying because it feels good or because it's right? Are you building a brand or birthing purpose? Hidden seasons answer those questions. They strip away the superficial so the sacred can emerge. And here's the beautiful thing. When the time is right, God will reveal you. You won't have to force it, fake it, or fight for it. The same God who hid you will highlight you. The same people who overlook you will see what God saw all along. But when that moment comes, you'll be ready. You won't crumble under pressure because you've been conditioned in private. You'll walk with grace, humility, and wisdom because the wilderness taught you what the world couldn't. So if you're in a hidden season right now, don't despise it. Don't rush it. Don't rush it. Embrace it. Let God work on your roots while He prepares your fruit. He's not punishing you. He's protecting the promise. He's not delaying you. He's developing you. The hidden place is holy ground because it's where transformation takes place. While others may chase the spotlight, choose to stay surrendered. Let God finish His work in private, because when He finally reveals you, you won't just be seen, you'll be ready. You won't just shine, you'll sustain. And when the light hits you, it won't blind you, because you'll know that the glow didn't come from fame. It came from the fire God refined you in. So rest in your hidden season, worship there, grow there, heal there, because hidden seasons are holy seasons, and heaven is doing its best work in the dark. Trust what God is building in private. It's preparing you for a future that's far greater than you can imagine. We've all felt the sting of rejection. That moment when the door closes, the call doesn't come, the person walks away, or the opportunity slips through your fingers. It's the ache that whispers, you're not good enough, the pain that tempts you to question your worth, your gift, and even your purpose. But what if I told you that rejection isn't always the enemy you think it is? What if the thing that broke your heart was actually God's way of saving it? Sometimes His no is not punishment, it's protection. His redirection is wrapped in disappointment because He knows if you could see what He sees, you'd thank Him for every closed door. Rejection feels personal, but it's often providential. We cry over what we lost, not realizing God was steering us away from something that couldn't hold our future. You thought it was a setback, but it was actually divine steering. God saw the whole map, the detours, the dangers, and the dead ends. And in His mercy, He said, not this way, not this time. Rejection hurts because it interrupts our expectations, but it's also what protects our destiny. The no that crushed you might be the same no that kept you from collapse. Think about it. How many times have you prayed for something, begged for something, worked for something, and when it didn't happen, you thought God had forgotten you? But months or years later, you looked back and said, God, I'm so glad you didn't give me what I wanted. That job you didn't get, that relationship that ended, that door that never opened. It all made sense later. Because when you carry divine purpose, not every path is permitted. Some opportunities look good, but they're not God. Some people look promising, but they're not purpose. And sometimes the only way for God to protect your calling is to reject your comfort. Rejection can be the greatest teacher. It exposes where you've placed your dependence. It shows you whether your identity is rooted in people's approval or in God's assignment. Because if rejection can break you, it means you were depending on the wrong source for validation. God will allow certain no's to free you from unhealthy attachments to people, to titles, to timelines, to the idea that success equals acceptance. He'll strip away the things that keep you small so he can reveal the version of you that's unstoppable. Look at Joseph, rejected by his brothers, thrown into a pit, sold into slavery, falsely accused, imprisoned, and yet every rejection was a redirection that led him closer to the palace. The same brothers who betrayed him had no idea they were pushing him toward the place where God would raise him up. Joseph's life proves that sometimes what looks like betrayal is actually transportation. God will use rejection as the vehicle to move you to your next destination. Rejection doesn't mean you're disqualified. It means you're being redirected. Every no is a signpost pointing you closer to the yes that's meant for you. God's plan is not fragile. It doesn't break because people walked away. It doesn't crumble because a door closed. His plan is strong enough to reroute you every time something doesn't go your way. The rejection you're crying over might be the reason you're still standing. But here's what you've got to understand. God's redirection doesn't always feel like safety at first. It feels like confusion, silence, and loss. That's because we often mistake familiarity for security. We cling to what we know, even when it's no longer serving us. And when God removes it, we call it rejection. But God's no is never cruel. It's strategic. It's intentional. He will close a door that you're still trying to hold open because he knows what's on the other side. He will block what you think is best to protect what he knows is blessed. The rejection that hurts you now is preparing you for the release that's coming next. You can't receive what's new while holding on to what's old. God will use rejection to clear your hands so you're ready for what's meant to be placed there. Every time someone walked out, every time a plan fell apart, every time life said no, heaven was whispering, wait, I've got something better. Rejection is the training ground of resilience. It teaches you how to rise without revenge, how to heal without hate, how to move without needing closure. When you understand that rejection is redirection, you stop chasing what left and start embracing what's next. You realize that you didn't lose anything that was meant for you, because what's meant for you will always find you, whole, ready, and aligned. Even Jesus faced rejection. The very people he came to save were the ones who denied him. But that rejection was necessary for redemption. The cross was birthed out of betrayal. Salvation came through suffering. If Jesus needed rejection to fulfill his mission, don't think you'll reach yours without it. Sometimes rejection is the evidence that you're on the right path. Because the enemy doesn't fight what isn't threatening. The moment you step into destiny, rejection rises up to test your endurance. But what the enemy meant for harm, God turns for good. Rejection builds discernment. After a few heartbreaks, a few lost opportunities, you start to see differently. You learn that no isn't always negative, it's navigational. You start thanking God for the doors that didn't open because now you see the ones that truly matter. You stop forcing connections and start flowing in alignment. Rejection refines your taste. It teaches you the difference between what you want and what you're worthy of. When you carry divine purpose, you can't afford to interpret everything through emotion. You've got to look through revelation. Ask God, what are you teaching me through this rejection? Because sometimes the lesson isn't about who left. It's about what's left in you. The pain of rejection often reveals the parts of you God still wants to heal. Maybe that no was meant to break your dependency on human approval. Maybe it was meant to teach you self-worth. Maybe it was meant to redirect your focus from them to Him. So stop mourning what God moved. Stop replaying the no as if it defines you. That door closed because your destiny doesn't live there anymore. You're too anointed to fit back into places that can't hold your growth. Rejection is God's way of saying, you've outgrown this level. He's not withholding something from you. He's positioning something for you. Rejection isn't the end of your story. It's the redirection to the right chapter. Every no pushes you closer to your next. Every closed door clears the path for open heavens. So instead of asking, why did they reject me? Start declaring, thank you, God, for redirecting me. Because someday you'll look back and realize that His no was His way of saying, I love you too much to let you settle. And when that moment comes, you'll see that the rejection that once broke your heart was really the protection that preserved your purpose. God's no was never meant to destroy you. It was designed to deliver you into destiny. Faithfulness is not glamorous. It's not shiny. It's not trending, and it's rarely applauded. In a world where everyone wants quick success and instant validation, faithfulness feels outdated. But if you've ever walked with God for real, you know that faithfulness is the secret ingredient of breakthrough. You can't substitute it with talent. You can't fake it with charm. You can't replace it with opportunity. Because God doesn't bless performance, He blesses persistence. He honors those who show up when it's hard, who keep believing when it's silent, who stay consistent when no one's watching. See, anybody can be faithful when the spotlight is shining and everything's working. But the real test comes when the crowd leaves, when the doors close, when you've been praying for months and nothing seems to move. That's when faithfulness becomes warfare. That's when the enemy whispers, what's the point? But let me tell you something. It's in those moments that heaven takes notice. Because faithfulness is not about what you do when it's easy. It's about who you are when it's hard. We love to talk about favor, but few want to embrace faithfulness. Everyone wants the crown, but nobody wants the consistency it takes to carry it. Yet every giant of faith you admire, Joseph, Ruth, Daniel, David, they were all people who stayed faithful when it wasn't fashionable. They kept showing up in seasons that didn't make sense. They kept serving in places that didn't celebrate them. And because they were consistent, God trusted them with elevation. Let's talk about David for a moment. Before he became king, he was a shepherd, doing a job nobody wanted, in a place nobody valued. There were no lights, no recognition, no audience, just sheep, solitude, and silence. But David stayed faithful. He learned to worship in the wilderness. He learned to lead in the lonely places. And while everyone else was chasing the throne, David was chasing the heart of God. That's why when the time came, God said, I've found a man after my own heart. Faithfulness will always find favor, even when it looks forgotten. The thing about faithfulness is it's not glamorous, but it's powerful. It's the slow burn that produces lasting fire. You may not see results overnight, but every act of obedience, every small yes, every quiet prayer is planting something eternal. The world teaches you to chase speed, but the kingdom values stability. God is not looking for perfection. He's looking for persistence. Because consistency reveals commitment, and commitment reveals character. There are going to be days when you don't feel anointed, when your prayers sound dry and your worship feels empty, when it seems like the very thing you've been called to do isn't working. But that's when faithfulness becomes your anchor. You keep sowing even when the soil looks barren. You keep praying even when heaven feels silent. You keep serving even when no one claps. Because the truth is, God is not measuring your pace. He's measuring your posture. It's Staying faithful when it's not fashionable means refusing to bow to the pressure of performance. It means you don't quit just because it doesn't look successful yet. You don't walk away because the fruit hasn't shown up. The seed always takes time before it sprouts. And the deeper your roots go in obedience, the stronger your harvest will be. Sometimes your faithfulness is the very thing God is using to break generational barriers. Maybe no one in your family ever stayed consistent. Maybe they started strong but never finished. Maybe they had big dreams but no endurance. But you're the one who decided to keep going. You're the one breaking the pattern. You're the one standing in the gap, saying, even if it takes years, I'll stay faithful. And because of that decision, your children, your legacy, your lineage will walk in blessings you never saw coming. Faithfulness doesn't just build destiny, it builds depth. It teaches you how to trust God's timing instead of your own. It humbles your ego and trains your spirit. It teaches you to value process more than popularity, because God doesn't elevate you based on who's watching. He elevates you based on what he's watching. And he's watching how you handle the quiet seasons, the disappointing seasons. Let me tell you, there is glory in consistency. There's beauty in simply showing up. The enemy's greatest strategy isn't always destruction. Sometimes it's distraction. If he can't stop you, he'll try to wear you out. He'll make you think your small efforts don't matter. But the truth is, heaven moves through consistency. Every time you stay faithful, you frustrate the enemy. Every time you show up, even when it's hard, you prove that your faith isn't built on feelings, it's built on foundation. Think about Ruth. After her husband died, she could have gone back home. She could have quit, walked away, said, this isn't worth it. But she stayed. She followed Naomi. She worked in the fields when nobody saw her. She stayed faithful in the background, and God brought Boaz to the foreground. One act of consistency led to a lineage that birthed a king. That's the power of staying faithful. What looks small to others is significant in the spirit. Faithfulness will take you places hustle never can, because hustle depends on you, but faithfulness depends on God. Hustle says, I have to make it happen. Faithfulness says, if God called me, he'll sustain me. When you're faithful, you don't panic about timing. You trust it. You understand that delay is not denial. You know that if you just keep sowing, one day the harvest has to come. It's spiritual law. Be not weary in well-doing, for in due season you shall reap, if you faint not. So stay faithful even when it's not fashionable. Keep building when nobody's watching. Keep writing, keep praying, keep working, keep believing, because your consistency is a prophecy. It's declaring to the atmosphere that you refuse to give up. It's saying, I may not see it yet, but I know God's still working. Every small step is shaking something in the spirit realm. Every act of obedience is breaking through barriers that have held others back. And when the season shifts, and it will, you'll look back and realize it was your faithfulness that built the bridge to your breakthrough. You'll see that what felt unnoticed was actually God's way of refining you, because he never wastes the faithfulness of his children. Every tear, every prayer, every time you didn't quit, it's all recorded in heaven's book. So don't let culture make you believe that consistency is boring. Faithfulness is powerful. It's the quiet revolution that heaven honors. You may not go viral, but you'll go victorious. You may not get the crowd, but you'll get the crown. Because at the end of the day, God is not looking for the famous, he's looking for the faithful. And if you stay faithful when it's not fashionable, you'll look up one day and realize that your consistency didn't just carry you through seasons, it broke barriers that will bless generations.